Hey, everybody. We're going to be talking to Scientology Audit Streets LA, William Gude, today about what's happening in Los Angeles with protests, with a little bit of court news, and whatever questions come up. So let's get to it. Hello, and everybody. Hello, and welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult, where we talk about Scientology and culty things. My 35 years in this cult and leaving with 3 generations of my family. Big thank you to everybody who's here in the live chat. Great to see you. Huge mahalo to the members of the channel. I always appreciate your support. And big thank you to the moderators who are going to be helping out today. If you have a question, go ahead and put question in all caps and have your question follow, and we'll get to as many of those as we can in our interview and chat today with William. So I'm going to pull him up right now. Hold on, I got to unmute you. Welcome, William Gude. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a hot minute. I want to say it's been like maybe 2 months or so since we've sat down and caught up and had a chat. So I'm glad you were able to make it.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Now, of course, I have a million questions as per usual. And I've been following along. Can you talk a bit about, hold on a second. Why do I hear that background noise? There we go. Can you talk a bit about, can we kind of start with Solomon had a win, and I was watching what you were saying about how he and his mom worked together on it. And that was just amazing. I didn't know that that's the way that they were doing it for a while. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So Solomon, had a situation with a certain person where he was being harassed. And, as a 16-year-old at the time, took it upon himself to fill out all the paperwork and go down to the courthouse and file all the paperwork essentially on his own, just with his mother helping out. But he really took the initiative on it.
Wow. That's really amazing. He's been through a lot of things, and it seems like each step of the way, when you give him some guidance and tips, like he picks it up and he'll run with it. What are your thoughts on, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm impressed by the kid, the young man. When I first met him back in January, listen, I'll put a little bit of his business out there, talking to his family, spent a lot of time on his couch and really wasn't that motivated in things. And I've seen over the course of the last 10 months, I mean, he has grown, literally, because he's probably grown about 3, 4 inches, but at the same time, as a person, he's really matured. And I think he's really going to be set up well. I think the last 10 months, he's grown more than any other 10-month period in his life. And I think his family would agree.
Yeah, that really is a really interesting side effect of what he got involved in with protesting and what he learned throughout that process. There's so many life lessons in there. Can you let's talk about what happened with Danny, with Scooter Guy. And I think everybody watching knows what happened, where the Scientologist on a scooter came at Danny with it, tried to claim that he stole it, and they tried to get a temporary restraining order. What were some of the things that stood out you about that, witnessing this whole thing play out?
I think the biggest thing that stands out is, first off, the case was ridiculous to begin with.
Hmm.
Okay. What stands out is the fact that the Church of Scientology will misuse the legal system as a weapon against their critics, and they will do anything possible to silence their critics. I think it's important to understand that it both targeted Scott and Danny back to back at the same time that the occupation was going on. So while Scott was running the occupation, they came and got a restraining order against him, and then Danny took over immediately, and then they got a restraining order against him. So it was very targeted. What stood out in the case, I think, to look at this case, you really have to look at Kendrick Moxon. I think you have to look at, quite honestly, the tactics that he used, which are nothing short of sleazy, and I think that's the best way to describe them. It was just a nonstop hit piece, culminating with Kendrick Moxon referring to Danny, Mindy, and Leah as a gang members. I don't think anybody's going to look at Danny or Leah as being gang members, but that's how he classified them in court. um, when you look at the evidence that they presented, virtually everything was misrepresented, falsified. A
Mm.
lot of the evidence, the video evidence that they presented was manipulated. I think one of the most ridiculous parts was showing Danny and Leah and Mindy walking down the street towards the scooter guy. So at court, the video they presented was sped up to make it look like they were rushing over and being aggressive. Constant manipulation, but at the same time, the only video that they presented was video from way down the street, even though that blue building has cameras everywhere. The camera angles that were closer to the incident would show it clearly. They didn't present. Somehow that wasn't admitted.
Wow, not surprised about that at all.
Yeah, so I just think that if day after day of watching this, not to mention the constant offers that Kendrick Moxon was offering Danny of, oh, you know what, instead of 150 yards, well, why don't we give you an offer of you only have to stay 100 yards away? Well, I mean, it doesn't matter how far away if the restraining order is in place, and even if it's five yards away, this man, Mr. Campos, was going to weaponize that, and he would have been over there and forcing the issue and getting, essentially, he would have eventually put Danny in handcuffs. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think that I wish that we had the ability to actually show what happened in court. I wish it was live streamed, because I think if it was live streamed, you can see how nasty and disgusting the Church of Scientology lawyers were in this case. I
Mhm.
think decent people would look at the tactics and say this person, Kendrick Moxon, has no business being a lawyer in the state of California.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard over and over again that his performance and work is fairly subpar.
He's
And
terrible.
and yeah, and almost like an embarrassing for even Scientology to put this guy forth and send him out. And considering that Kendrick Moxon is a hardcore Scientologist who has done the upper levels, and I'm sure you're familiar, or you're probably familiar with what happened to his daughter in
Sure.
Scientology, to Stacy unaliving herself in an incredibly tragic way, distraught, not allowed to see her husband, who she'd been separated from for like 2 years.
Mm.
And all the whole circumstances around that, people who were there have since left Scientology and shared what actually happened. Do you think that he is aware of what happened, or he believes the shore story, as they call it in Scientology, that his daughter was trying to save a squirrel from this electrical vault?
You know, I understand that Kendrick Moxon is a public Scientologist, but there are a few things that really stood out in court. Um, he did not know how to operate an iPad. He didn't understand that after, if you let an iPad just idle, it's going to snooze and lock. And every time he had to unlock the iPad or needed sort of basic help with handling using the laptop and using the iPad, he had to get help from other people.
Hmm.
um, I don't think this is a guy who spends much time on the internet. I truly believe that he could be the type of person who is so isolated and will only believe whatever the Church of Scientology tells him and will not look at outside sources for information. So, it's hard to say uh, if he knows better or not. To be honest with you, one day in last week in the hallway, when we were leaving, I had a big fight with him in the hallway, and he wasn't minding his business. I was talking about how Scientology lawyers are awful to somebody else, and he felt the need to butt in. And he pointed at me and said something, and I said, "Well, Kendrick, Scientology killed your daughter, and you did nothing about it. In fact, you're still giving them more and more money. What does that say about you?" He brought up my son's death, said I was a criminal. I told him he was a criminal Scientologist. Um, I will say this though, something little different happened at that courthouse. We were dealing with the L.A. Sheriff's Department. That's who works as the bailiffs. one thing that stands out is how the bailiffs don't come to the rescue of the Scientologists the way that the LAPD has. Um, Leaving the like I said, we were screaming at each other in the hallways, and we were telling us that we had to leave. And the main LASD who was telling me I had to leave. When I got outside, I saw him come outside the building with a duffel bag, wearing shorts and a T-shirt. He had changed. He immediately came over and gave me a fist bump. After Solomon won his case, the bailiff that had been in courtroom the entire time also came out in shorts and a T-shirt, was leaving for the day, and congratulated us on the win, even though Solomon wasn't there, as myself and Jessica, and then turned around and screamed, "F that guy." I don't think that would happen with the Hollywood or Northeast Division LAPD. Um, Even yesterday, it was, listen, after the court case was called, they gave the verdict. It was loud in courtroom, and normally the bailiff would stand up and say, quiet in the courtroom. The judge kind of slinked out of there, and the bailiff just didn't care, and it got very loud in the hallway, and they had to bring a sheriff's escort, and they did not look enthusiastic about doing it,
Mhm.
as about 20 people were being very loud in the hallway. And listen, I have a certain type of voice that can be very loud in a hallway, and they had to escort him to a s- a separate room where they then put him into a sheriff's vehicle to escort him to the garage because things were that bad. But with that having been said, as loud as we were, I didn't feel like the sheriffs they didn't try to quiet us at all. And there were 50 people in the hallway who were there for other business, and they were curious about what's going on. And we told them, and they kind of seemed like they were with us. I don't think the Church of Scientology is well liked in LA. And I think that in that courthouse, and I think this is the key thing, I think in that courthouse, I think people are just sick of the Church of Scientology. I do believe that among the clerks and possibly the judges and definitely the bailiffs, people are familiar with what's going on. They
Mhm.
know about the Church of Scientology. And I think that if you look at, getting back to Moxon, if you look at his lawyering, he's terrible. This guy is, I thought Leah Safian, who represented La Poubelle, was a terrible lawyer. Kendrick Moxon is the worst lawyer I've ever seen in my life. Yet he has this undeserved ego where he's obnoxious to everyone. And I even to say the clerk and the judge.
Hmm.
This guy has this ego where he feels that everyone is beneath him. I personally, you look at him, he's this diminutive, crusty little guy who has no sort of presence in a courtroom that's appealing. Um, I think that and we see this throughout with Scientology a lot. I think he feels that he has Scientology's backing, and therefore he's very important and very powerful. What I think he's realizing is the aura of Scientology and people being scared of Scientology, those days are over.
Yeah.
And no one's falling for that anymore, Kendrick. And now you're just, you're an empty suit.
Absolutely. That's definitely what I've heard from multiple people, even who've worked with him over the years, and that this is all he's doing now is, he works for Scientology and this is what he does day in and day out. Do you think that with everything that went on last year, when you first started protesting and at the Hollywood Testing Center, and then the whole Winter Wonderland thing happened, and it just took on a whole new level for bringing awareness about Scientology. Their hope is they do it and they build all this, community feel good, safe pointing and whatnot. But with people out there live streaming and protesting, didn't quite go that way last year. Do you think they will hold that event this year, knowing that the same thing is probably going to happen?
I think they're in quite a conundrum because if you look at just the foot traffic through the test center as compared to all the other locations where they could recruit at, there's nothing like that in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
In my personal opinion, I mean, if you think about the traffic that was going through there each day, the amount of book sales and course sales that they were making, um, it was a decent amount of money, and it was a decent amount of people they were getting through there who potentially became recruits, and that all ended. It all ended on January 20th. and they've been closed ever since. Now, don't get me wrong, the doors are open. If somebody wants to walk in, they can, but they've also pulled down the shades, they frosted all the windows. It's not inviting at all. In fact, the test center looks incredibly creepy. I don't imagine many people want to go through those front doors.
Mhm.
The recruiting tactics are now are trying them trying to be covert and going to. And I understand they've always gone to sort of flea markets and stuff like that, but their footprint is way smaller now since the test center closed. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think they really need the Winter Wonderland to open up. I think that they're going to be in the hole financially as far as bringing in new revenue if they don't open it. So you figure in less than 2 months, that's when it would open. Do I think they will have it? I think if they open Winter Wonderland and tried to do the whole recruiting thing again, last year we would have 50, 75, 100 people out there protesting on any given night. I think if they opened it again, there would be 500 people. I
Mhm.
think that, the way that I would say between October of last year and January, the entire like protesting, it really exploded on TikTok and then moved over to YouTube. Can they afford to have that sort of to go viral again like that? I don't know. So listen, I don't know how they can open Winter Wonderland because it will be an absolute S show for them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it will. My feeling on it is I think they are going to do it. That would have to be it's something they've done every year for so long, and I don't see them just like, "Oh, we're just not gonna do it," because there could be some protesters. I would expect that they're gonna try some type of shenanigans to prevent what happened last year, and as per usual, they're gonna fail about it. I don't know if you heard when you talk about recruitment at the Hollywood Testing Center, there was a young man that Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology interviewed named Leo Perez. He was an ex-Sea Org member. He was recruited into Scientology at the testing center right there on Hollywood Boulevard.
Really?
Yes, and he was recruited into the Sea organization. They basically manipulated just some thoughts that he had about something looking really familiar, and they did the whole like, oh, you were a Sea Org member in a previous lifetime, that whole thing, and they
Huh.
recruited him into the Sea organization. And he has since left, and he did that interview with Aaron. But I thought it was interesting because it really goes to show if this if the protest movement had happened like at that time, how he would have never gone in there very potentially. So it is a key location and thing to have them slow down to that degree, and even if they're going somewhere else, they're often still seen there and all over the place. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
listen,
It makes a
if they
difference.
go to another location, they still have to get them back to the test center to show the movie and go through the entire recruiting process. That's difficult. Normally, eh, again, you can go to a different location, and they do some recruiting over on Sunset in Vermont, over by the Blue Building, but it's difficult, right? It's mostly working class people around there who are on their way to work, and you're trying to get a moment of their time to just listen to you, and then from there you're trying to walk them 4 blocks down the street, and then from there you're trying to get them to spend time watching a movie and then get them to buy the book, and they maybe don't have as much disposable income as you think. Whereas with the test center, these were tourists who had plenty of free time and had plenty of money in their pocket and are there on the spot. I don't think that you can replicate that elsewhere. So shutting down that place, and listen, I talk about this all the time. Church of Scientology, since they are tax exempt, they can't just take money in and just put it in their bank account and bank it. By law, it has to be put to use, and usually that's through purchasing properties.
Mhm.
So right now I think they have plenty of properties that are worth tons of money, but I don't know if they have a ton of actual liquid operating capital to work with. I think that again, if the test center isn't open up and they can't get that influx of money, I guess it's a lot like how we have Black Friday, how a lot of retail stores are in the red until Black Friday, and that's when they become profitable. I think Winter Wonderland is sort of same type of thing where I don't think they're getting much recruiting year round, but they're going to get a huge push during that month, and you can't replicate that, and you can't replicate the foot traffic there. I don't know how they deal with it. I like the position that they're in, and I dare them to open up that place.
Yeah, I know. You know they're gonna, or at least try with Winter Wonderland. Linda Lou is a good question. Do you think Danny's and Nance's ridiculous, nonsensical cases are similar in taking as long as possible? Because as you know, Scientology's tactic is they want to draw this out as long as possible once they get you into court so that you're not at the blue buildings or at Scientology properties protesting. And we're seeing this, like she mentioned with Nance's case in Chicago. And what do you think about that? How they just, because it just drags on and on and on. They keep trying to move it, keep it going as long as possible.
100%. Moxon's entire strategy seems so. They dedicated 3 days to Danny's case as for the trial. That's a long time for a restraining order case. Moxon, his presentation, I would say, took up over 2 days of that case, or I think exactly 2 days of that case. And he tried to find ways to push it back. He was very slow in his questioning. He would come back to the same question later on, even though it had already been answered. The entire and on top of it, he actually requested to the judge that they extend things, that they come back another day, that they file other briefs and stuff. And understand, if you burn through those 3 days you set aside and for testimony, you run out of time. It's not like you can just roll into that fourth day. There may be other cases on the docket, and the next availability may not be for another month. I saw that with my case, where my trial went on for months. I think it went on for like a month and a half or 2 months, because there was a constant delay. It was very clear that Kendrick Moxon was trying to draw this out, because if they ran out of time this week, they'd have to get another date. It would probably be a month from now. And I think, honestly, they were trying to extend it out to try to get to like the Winter Wonderland period
Mhm.
and keep people away. So yeah, that is absolutely something that they try to do. They try to drag it out as long as possible. They try to delay and force new dates.
Wow. It does seem, even though we know that that's what they do and that's what they're going to do each time, it never ceases to amaze me how, because they have to follow the Scientology handbook, what L. Ron Hubbard said to do, they have to do, and it doesn't change. Do you have any idea what is the feedback that you get from like Dorothy, who is Danny's lawyer, and other people who are new to kind of going up against Scientology in the professional world? Like, when they're seeing this and they're seeing Kendrick Moxon and the scooter guy on the stand, what are they thinking about this?
Listen, these cases are ridiculous. I mean, if you
Mhm.
look at the case that they built, right? So they got a restraining order. So to get a permanent restraining order, you have to prove that one of two things: either that there is a pattern of continued harassment, or that there was an act of violence. So what they did is they tried to use three incidents to build their pattern. The one where Danny got arrested, where Scooter Guy pushed his scooter into him,
Mhm.
which Scooter Guy claimed when Danny redirected the scooter, it blew out his back. And he's been in terrible pain ever since. He's had to go to the chiropractor over and over again, and he's still very uncomfortable. But that's not when I see him outside. He's walking just fine when he's bumming
Yeah.
cigarettes.
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw that I think it was on your stream outside the courthouse. I'm like, look at this dude walking up to strangers bumming cigarettes in between court.
well, they even brought up they brought up the fact that he claimed that he uses his scooter as a crutch. That's the purpose of it. It's sort of like a crutch on wheels, and he uses it to balance himself, which is just nonsensical. Dorothy brought up the fact that uh, under LA law, you're not allowed to actually have a scooter on the sidewalk at all to begin with. Um, you know, I think when you're a lawyer looking in on these cases, you say to yourself, these are absolutely ridiculous. And I think there's a mentality that goes along with the Scientology mindset, where they tried to build these straw cases that are incredibly flimsy, and present them. Here's another thing: is they present a ton of irrelevant evidence. And for some reason, they think that that's going to be compelling, because maybe in the past it was. Maybe in the past they would just have overwhelm you with irrelevant evidence, and it would scare people into working on an agreement and saying, yeah, I don't want to go up against this. And you know what? If you don't have a lawyer, it can be difficult to navigate all that evidence because Dorothy had most of that stuff thrown out. Most of the stuff Moxon was trying to submit as evidence was just, it was ridiculous, and it was thrown out. But you need a lawyer to kind of understand how to navigate that. um, Here's what I would say. I think the court is sick of seeing these tactics. I
Mhm.
think the court sees the evidence as being flimsy, and that the counsel is walking a really tight line there, where it's getting to the point where it's completely unethical. And I will say, actually, what Moxon does is completely unethical. Thankfully, the judge saw through all of it. I think the judge in my case saw through all of it. I think this is the same judge who on Monday is going to rule on Scott's case, and
Mhm.
it's the same sort of pattern. I think that their days of manipulating the legal system, at least here in Los Angeles, are over. I think they've built a reputation now that is throughout the courthouse. Um, I will say this. The judge went out of her way to allow Ken Moxon to do a lot of things. She spent a lot of time being way rougher on Dorothy than to Moxon. I think Dorothy was a little annoyed by it. I personally, I saw through it, because I saw the same thing happening in my case. I think that, understanding how they love to litigate, she was all about protecting her decision. She was making it appeal proof.
Mhm.
So therefore, since she gave Moxon a ton of leeway, he can't claim in an appeal that the procedures were violated, that he wasn't able to properly present his case. He can't say that. And so I think the judges understand that going into these things now, which means that they're hearing about this stuff. And you know what? It's not in a vacuum. This Scientology stuff has been in the news for a very long time, and especially in Los Angeles, over the last year or so. It's hard to believe that it's not getting back to the clerks, getting back to the judges, and they don't have their own sort of opinions.
Yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall behind the scenes to just hear what they actually think, and watching this clown show and seeing right through it. It part of what's frustrating, at least as somebody, when, in watching this, is how ridiculous it is, and how it's just Scientology just knows, or the things that they use are so dumb. It's the tactics are obvious, but at the same time, some things the court actually has to allow them to do. It's just not a situation. And they know that, and they take full advantage of that. And that's the part that I think is so embarrassing.
And the
Scient-
gaslighting.
and the
Gaslighting.
gaslighting,
Well,
yes.
they gaslight the judge. You can't show a video of the scooter guy, and the scooter guy, and Dorothy was very effective with this. She was saying the scooter guy, Campos, claimed that Danny knocked him off the sidewalk. So she went to the video with him on the stand, brought a laptop over to him, and went frame by frame and said, go through here and show me the exact point where your feet were knocked off the sidewalk, frame by frame. And he couldn't do it because it did not happen, but yet they still claimed it. Kendrick Moxon claimed that Campos was in fear, and so he stepped back, but the video clearly shows him charging towards Danny. Again, it's the gaslighting. It doesn't, it doesn't work with the judges.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they think it'll work. And on top of it, you're insulting the judge. You're insulting everybody involved with that, and it's just constant throughout the trial. And again, a lot of irrelevant stuff. I don't understand why they think that. One thing I like about Dorothy is, and it's sort of my mentality too, is make your case, and if it's solid, you stand on the facts of it and make it short and brief. You don't have to just keep on going on. Where Moxon, you get to the point where the judge is like, okay, is that all, Mr. Moxon? Is there anything further? Can you move on to the next line of questioning, Mr. Moxon? He doesn't even understand that he was annoying the judge. I told him out in the hallway, I said, the judge hates you. I said, the
Yeah.
judge absolutely hates you. And it's true. I truly believe the judge hates him, because and he brought it himself. He brought himself because the way he's presenting it, himself in court, insulting everybody while having this smug attitude, and he thinks that he is better than everybody else, wearing the same two suits that he's worn every day. He probably wore them every day since 1984 when he was watching LA Law or something like that. He's not a good trial attorney. He's not compelling. Dorothy's excellent. Like, Dorothy will bring the drama, knows how to raise a voice, can, really turn it on. Kendrick, you might as well just listen to a robot.
Well, you kind of are. He is
Yeah.
at the top of Scientology's bridge to total freedom. I mean, that's kind of what you end up getting.
Yeah.
Scientology Up North has a question. Where do you find the time for all your activism and supporting the community while also running a company? Tell us your secret.
It's funny because my neighbor, like a lot of my neighbors, didn't know what I did until, honestly, the Scientology stuff. Because I've been doing my activism for years. My one neighbor says she would always just see me just leaving out of my house and going somewhere in the middle of the night, walking off. And she was like, "What is he going to do?" She said, "I'll be honest with you, I was going to follow you to find out what you're doing." And then she realized all the stuff that I do. And she's like, "If you ever need help with your dog and stuff," I don't know how I find all the time for it. I try to pace myself. I can't do everything. I mean, I'll be honest with you right now, with the Scientology stuff, I haven't really done much. I would say since February or so, or March. My whole big thing was the money is at the test center, right? So like I said, I wanted to hurt their ability to bring in new money. I wanted to hurt their ability to bring in new recruits, and I wanted to inform the public. And I felt like at the test center we accomplished it, and we shut it down. So they're not bringing in money, they're not bringing in new recruits, and we brought a lot of information to the public. I just don't see as many targets to protest at now. There's nothing wrong with the blue building. It's just a little slow for me. It's like I want to stop recruiting, and it's not like they're doing a ton of recruiting over there. So in the last, say, since March, I've been more focused on, say, focusing on the politicians and stuff. So I pace myself in that way. Things sort of go in waves. While I was going hardcore in my Scientology stuff, I wasn't really going after the politicians and police as much. So it's not as much as you may think. It's just that I think when somebody sees me confronting a politician or something like that, it kind of stays out there for a few days, but that only took me 15 minutes of time. So,
Yeah. I remember when you went to the retirement send off for the chief of
oh,
police with
mm.
that turnover, when that happened, with the different chief of police now for the LAPD, has anything changed?
So listen, I actually did a podcast a couple months ago, and they were talking about the 10 finalists for the LAPD chief. I was going through them one by one. I said, actually, the only one I like out of them that I know of the finalists was this Lillian Carranza. Um, And then the person who was interviewing me said, "Did you know that McDonald, the old LASD sheriff, is also in consideration?" I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Really?" I said he would be a good choice. Listen, he's not perfect, but when he was in the sheriff's department, he was known for firing cops who were bad. That's
Yeah.
what he was known for, and he was known for holding some cops accountable. And it actually really annoyed, to say the least, the deputies, and it led to some blowback. And then next thing you know, he was voted out, and the new guy came in, and he was a terror, Villanueva. So I'm hopeful, because if somebody who's been willing to hold cops accountable in the past, that's all I ask. I talked about this on Twitter. I talk about this all the time. I never ask for new policies with the LAPD. All I'm asking for is that existing policies are enforced. It's not a big ask. And so I am hopeful that this guy, out of all the choices, he was at the top of my list of the potential chiefs who I would like to see in there. So now we'll see. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this choice. Um, I'm not going to sit back and just expect them to start holding cops accountable. I'm gonna force them. I'm gonna stay on top of them. But listen, I think this is an opportunity where we can make some change. Um, and most importantly, it was very important for me that the new chief come from outside the LAPD.
Mm.
I think they're so entrenched with holding on to secrets and stuff. I think this guy comes in, and whatever mess he sees, he says, "Well, that's not my mess. I have no problem throwing the last person under the bus." And so, yeah, I'm hopeful.
You're hopeful that maybe there'll be it would be so nice. Just even a little, just even a little,
Yeah, a little.
a little. Lady Jane Out has a question. How do you feel about the recent wins in court? And do you feel like the cult of Scientology will stop bringing false charges against y'all?
I think the days of these restraining orders are coming to an end. I do. Listen, let's look at this, right? They're the people, the plants that they're using. And listen, let's not pretend that Campos was not a plant. He was sent out there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because remember, they're talking about they need to establish a pattern of harassment. Again, there was that first incident, but the next two incidents they tried to establish as a pattern was Campos on a scooter riding it back and forth in front of Danny, while Danny's not really saying anything. And in fact, Danny on video, which the judge noted, said, "I'm not going to give him any attention." You know, and then Campos left, and then the third incident was pretty much the same sort of thing, where there wasn't any harassment. It was Campos sort of trying to bait them, and in fact, it hurt his own case, because it's kind of hard to claim that you were in fear of Danny while you were trying to purposely bait Danny.
Yeah.
So they were not able to, and the judge noted they were not able to establish that pattern of harassment. So they were relying on violence as being the reason for the restraining order. And the violence was Danny and this is the judge's own word, redirecting the scooter away from him so he didn't get hit. And, you know, that's not violence.
Yeah. No.
It's ridiculous. The problem for Campos is Campos drives a Mercedes. Okay. Campos is going to be responsible for lawyer fees in this case. Remember, Dorothy, I can't speak for her. She's a very good friend of mine, but I'll let her speak for herself. But listen, she's most likely going to file a fee motion. The Church of Scientology likes to string these things along. That just lawyer fees are adding up during the course of that. I would imagine that the time spent on this case, Dorothy's total bill would probably be $50,000, $60,000. And I think there's a very good chance that Campos is going to be responsible for that $50,000 or $60,000. He does not live at the Blue Building. He lives in his own apartment. Like I said, he has a Mercedes, and listen, he has an electric scooter. I don't think he's hurting for money. So yeah, he's going to have to pay out some money the same way that Francois La Poubelle. I was looking at the new amount for that case. I believe it's the total dollar amount has worked out in lawyer fees is 175,000 so far. I'm sorry, I take that back. 150,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Joey Rocket Eckers, who just recently filed an appeal. But at the same time, his lawyer just fired him. Joey didn't
He
fire his
did?
lawyer. Yeah, his lawyer wants nothing to do with this stuff anymore. I'm curious to find out why. I know why. First off, he can't win. It's an appeal proof case.
Yeah.
Secondly, I wonder if the Church of Scientology paid the full bill to him. I wonder if they paid a retainer, but they haven't finished paying their full amount. And maybe that law firm is like, you know what, we're moving on to the next thing. Because at first I thought, the law firm, they don't care if they win or lose. They're just charging the heck out of Scientology.
Yeah.
They put an enormous amount of resources. I mean, they had 2 lawyers working on the case and a bunch of other assistants. I would imagine that Joey's lawyers charged the Church of Scientology $200,000 in that case. But
Wow.
now he's going to be responsible for the lawyer's fees in my case too, which they were considerable. That's $175,000. It's a tough hole to be in. He's, like he says, he's a senior. I'm sure money's sort of tight. That's not my problem. He's going to have to pay. My lawyers deserve to be paid for what they've done, and he
Mm-hmm.
brought this on himself, so he's going to have to pay it. These are all the public Scientologists who are doing the dirty work for the Church of Scientology, who pushing these frivolous cases, and now they find themselves in a position where they're going to get stuck with the bill. Like I said, we do know the Church of Scientology paid for Joey's lawyers. But are
Yes.
they gonna give him the money to pay for my lawyers, or is Joey gonna get stuck with that? Is he gonna have the lien against his bank accounts and whatever assets he has? Because that's what's coming next.
Do
So
you know
listen,
when does that come out? When does that get decided?
so Joey filed an appeal. I think the appeal is going to be heard on December, and that's a long process. It takes like 6 months, and it'll never happen. The judge in the case was so smart because everything she did was about protecting her decision. The fee motion on that, I believe, is coming up in November. I know Lac Bell's fee motion is on November 6th. So I think that one is like a week later. So it'll be interesting. I will definitely be in court and enjoying myself for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun November.
Yes.
A388 is asking, do you think the cult of Scientology underestimated the power of people like yourself and the internet in general?
Yes. 100%. Um, again, uh, underestimating the internet in general, underestimating me was a huge mistake on their part, and it led to a lot of unforced errors, a lot of smugness, and they also thought that the LAPD was just going to protect them at all costs. If you look lately, the LAPD has essentially abandoned them. They don't really come to their rescues like they used to. So yeah, listen, the power of the internet. I think they didn't realize how viral this stuff had gone until it was too late. Like I said, in September, October of last year, it became very viral on TikTok. That's around the time in October, I believe, is when I first started live streaming on TikTok, and it went super viral. By the time December happened, and even getting into January, it was too late. They were then trying to react and try to embrace the internet. Because I remember we had that one email that we received where they were referring to us as squirrels, and they
Yeah.
said that they were going to turn TikTok against us by coming out there and recording us while we recorded them, and they were going to talk about the road to happiness, and that was going to make TikTok explode in their favor. It didn't actually uh, work the opposite way. So yeah, I think they underestimated the power of the internet and how viral things go, and they don't know how to embrace it themselves, because I don't know how you embrace with with their message. So yeah, but they're learned now. They know, but it's too late for them. And
Yeah,
I
they
told
never even made it onto TikTok. That was hilarious. I remember when they showed up in the phone. That was the leaked email that Diane, uh, Better Than Sitting at Home, I think is the name of her channel. It's something like that. I know I'm close, but Diane, Jack and Diane had leaked the emails because she was somebody in Ventura who was misguided by Scientology, who was infiltrating her community. It was like a mix of interfaith group, and Scientology had infiltrated it.
interesting.
And but before she knew what that was about, they had led her to believe, hey, you can help out too. And she wanted to volunteer because in that interfaith community, many people volunteer together. So she said Scientology never showed up one time to help with anything community oriented. All they did was try to recruit people into doing things for Scientology that they could then take credit for. It just, no, so it just was so on brand for them. And of course, Jessica Palmadessa says, Daddy William.
Ah,
One of my
that's funny.
favorite things to watch, honestly, is the two of you just bantering.
We have fun together. It's funny. Jessica brought up last night. It was about a year ago when we first met each other out there at the Scientology test center,
Mhm.
and I would say for a month it was pretty much just her and I just going at it all the time against them. I'm not gonna lie. Last October, November, December, even parts of January, wow, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think the shows that went on, and that's what I would consider it. Like, it was activism. We were definitely damaging Scientology, but at the same time, I think everybody was having a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
think it became a destination where people were traveling from inside California, Northern California, from other states and even other countries. People were telling us like they came here from Scotland because they wanted to see us. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And listen, I was walking past the test center yesterday across the street, and people still stop and take pictures of the building because it was such a big thing back then.
It was, and it is, and I love that about it, and I think that's why it grabbed so much attention because it was activism, but to your point, you're right, people really were having fun with it. And it can be there. A lot of the subjects, when we talk about the abuses within Scientology, is very heavy and is very much part of the main message. But to be able to go out there and protest Scientology and live stream and show that nobody's there and what really is going on can be fun as well. If somebody was thinking about going out and starting to live stream or protest Scientology, what advice would you give them? Because there's people all over the country now who are doing this and even all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, so I always break it down into two things, right? So, I don't consider myself a live streamer. I'm an activist that uses live streaming as a tool. Initially, I started live streaming because my phone's memory was just filling up with hours of footage, and I was like, why don't I just stream it? It'll be that way I don't have to use any of my memory, and you know what? Show people what's going on. Listen, the first thing I would say is said it from the beginning. You first thing you want to do is protect yourself, right? So you just want to understand the tactics that the Church of Scientology is going to use. They're going to send people out to try to bump into you. I have been spit on. I've had people blow snot on me. I've had my nose broken.
Mhm.
Thing I'll tell you is don't react to them. Let them react to you. Don't give them a reason to call the police. That's a legitimate reason. Um, if they do attack you, you just got to kind of take it, understand those things. Um, Other than that, inform yourself about the basics. Most importantly, it's always been a goal of mine when protesting is you want to bring the community along, right? I would like to always have the target that I'm protesting. So we had the test center, but
Mhm.
all the surrounding businesses, I made sure that I gave them shout outs and come visit this tour van and this 9.99 hoodie place or the food vendor, and bring the community along because it isolates the Church of Scientology. If I walk over there around the test center, I talk to those business owners all the time, and they just they're turned off by the Church of Scientology. I think it's important to bring the community along. I also think it's important to bring as many people in as possible. Um, I think it's important that not to let paranoia take over. I think when you're protesting, paranoia will sort of take over. I think people will kind of be skeptical of anybody who comes walking up and asking questions because, listen, Church of Scientology does some weird stuff. I
Mhm.
think you have to sort of look past that. If somebody comes walking up that's new and they're asking questions about Church of Scientology, answer their questions.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to say to them? They're going to get secrets out of you. You're live streaming everything you do. So there
Yeah.
aren't any secrets out there. Embrace people and being as inclusive as possible to make people new people feel comfortable who are out there, because sometimes they'll come out there and they'll be lingering a half a block away. They're afraid to show up. Try to make it inviting for them, make sure that it can be. Listen, I know some of the words that come out of my mouth are rough sometimes, but you want to embrace like families, kids that come out there. I've had a bunch of kids who have come out there to show me that they did their school project on the
Mhm.
Church of Scientology, showing me their slideshows that they put together on it. That's who we really want to make sure that we grab, right? We want to make sure that the young people understand that this is, a human trafficking cult, and so they can warn their friends and whatnot for the next generation. Like I've said, I think my generation has sort of failed in the sense that nobody spoke out. Bill Clinton is the one who gave him tax exempt status. He should have shown a little backbone and not allowed it to happen, especially since they got the tax exempt status by harassing IRS agents.
Yeah.
um, so there was a lot of dropping the ball back then. I don't think this new generation is going to drop the ball the same way. I think they understand how destructive this cult is, and they're not going to allow them to just sort of run over uh, and national political candidates and people in office.
Yeah. I get it. I love that advice. Keep it family friendly. And of course, don't block the entrance.
That's always listen. My good buddy Wally, I would hire him 2 hours every night from 8 to 10, specifically to make sure that nobody was blocking the entrance to the test center, and to
Yeah.
make sure that people can get up and down the sidewalk freely. We don't want to annoy people. We don't want to give police a reason to say that, to give a dispersal order because the sidewalk is blocked and it doesn't allow free movement.
Yeah. And that's usually one of the only things that when the police are called, one of the things they're looking for is, are you blocking the actual entrance? So don't block the entrance. Are you physically stopping anyone from coming in?
Yes.
So don't physically stop anyone from coming in. Like you were saying earlier, don't give them a reason to arrest you, or a reason to call the police, because they will make up enough on their own, and they will create scenarios like the one with Danny that they will try. And you talk about not taking the bait. What are Can you talk a little bit more like what that looks like? Are you talking about when it comes into like a confrontation with a police officer or a Scientologist?
Well, yeah, I mean, like Betty White, that I think that's her name, Betty Wright. I can't, not sure, but she's the one who sent out that email referring to us as squirrels and saying they were going to go out there and film us. And I felt that they came out there with, it was like 5 people with cell phones, uh, filming us, and it seemed like they were doing it to try to antagonize.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, hey, they have a right to be out here and record just as much as we do. So let them watch the show. Don't fall for the bait. Keep an eye on them. Make sure they don't try to start trouble. But at the same time, we want to show people, we want to show people exactly who the Church of Scientology is and how weird this is, that they're coming out here and using their phones, not just to intimidate people like me, but they're out there filming kids intimidating children. Is that a good look for a religion? What kind of religious organization goes out there and tries to intimidate children from criticizing the Church of Scientology? So yeah, you don't want to take the bait in that way. You don't want to say certain words, like you don't want to make any threats. You don't want to say, I'm going to kick your butt or anything like that. You don't. You want to make sure that you are fully protected at all times by saying things that are just legal.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, don't take their bait. And listen, if on extreme cases like a la poubelle, when somebody's punching in your face, like don't take the bait, walk away, try to get away. Um, but yeah, listen, I guess their tactics are going to evolve constantly. And listen, I would say, they've done a lot of dirty things to me. The way they've sort of come after me and attacked me, attacked my character, attacked my family. Just don't take the bait with that. These are losing tactics. Instead of retaliating by, you know, I'm not saying not to curse them, but understand that the average person is going to look at this religious organization attacking people's characters, attacking people's families, attacking to my deceased son, and I don't. It's just not going to be helpful for their cause. At the end of the day, everything we're doing, it's a PR battle. It's a PR
Mhm.
battle, and keep that in mind. You always want to be on the winning end of that PR battle. You want to make sure the public is on your side. So yeah, just don't take the bait. Keep them reacting. Stay focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. It takes some work there. That's something that many of us who grew up in Scientology or when Scientology, we had to do Scientology training routines where they do that bull baiting technique where you have to sit there comfortably and confront the person in front of you as they do or say anything except touch you to get you to react, cry, get mad, laugh, twitch, whatever it is. And you have to do the same action over and over and over again. So Scientologists, as part of their regular indoctrination and training, train in how to find and push buttons.
Mhm.
That is the thing that I think in sharing with anyone who's thinking of going out and protesting Scientology, or if you're already doing it, to your point, Scientology and Scientologists are really good at pushing buttons. It's part of what they do. Even in recruiting in Scientology, they will do what is called finding your ruin. So they want to use the personality test. They want to dig into your life, find out what's going on, and then show you how Scientology can handle that. So they're trained and used to being very invasive in what they do, so they can be aggressive towards a person and try to bait them into a reaction. And I think exactly what you were saying, if somebody is not ready for that, then be aware, because what they're trying to do is bait you into reacting in a way that they can call the police or get you arrested every single time.
Yeah, understand that everything that they're doing is sort of calculated in their interactions. They're going to try to distract you. Even little things like, if I'm in the middle of trying to stop a recruitment, you may have a body router come over and say, "Hey, I like your shoes. I like your shoes." They love saying that, just to try to distract you for that second or few seconds, so they can work somebody in there. So understand everything they do is calculated. Understand that they are going to try to find ways to sabotage you. Just keep that in mind while you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and then try to keep it family friendly, make friends with the local businesses so that the message can be delivered with and the safe bait pointing, because that's what Scientology does, is they'll go around to the local businesses and give their version of events and why people are there live streaming or protesting. They are going to do that. So I remember watching early on and realizing that you were doing that, and I thought that is so the way to go, because it's exactly what they use. And I always like to say, I left Scientology with 3 generations of my family. It took me 2 years to do it, but I basically used Scientology on Scientology.
Mhm.
And then you'll see this in videos. We were highlighting a couple protester videos earlier today, I think it was, where Z News in Kansas City was using Scientology terminology with Scientologists, and it just threw their TRs out. They weren't expecting it and realized that she knew she was talking about. It breaks that kind of circuit that Scientologists have when they put on the blinders, and all of the things they are authorized to say, it's right there. But when someone who's a protester starts talking about, hey, don't 2D flow that person, which is basically like flirting, it's like a vibe, or other things, it throws them.
It
It
puts them on
completely.
defense. It puts them in the defensive, right? And
Mhm.
another thing, I personally believe that, if you're in a fight with your opponent, it's kind of hard for them to attack you when you have your fist in their mouth, right? You want to make sure that the Scientologists and their agents are always on the defensive. They would prefer to be on the offensive. Isn't that one of the teachings? Is, attack, attack, attack. When you're always attacking, you don't know how to defend. So if you can flip it around and put them on the defensive, they do not know how to handle it. And then they start making mistakes. And then it becomes a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. It's You can count on it. If it's one thing, despite all of the training that a lot of them have done, they get very frustrated when you don't give them a reaction. And that is not unique to Scientology. I think it's kind of human nature when you're showing up in a way that's antagonistic or combative, and the person on the other side does not respond in the way that you would like them to. They get very frustrated. And because Scientology teaches, part of the indoctrination is anybody criticizing or who would be protesting Scientology has crimes. That's what they tell Scientologists. Oh, they're just a bunch of violent protesters and they have crimes. So that, of course, is why they're speaking out against Scientology. And we know that not to be true. But yeah, we see it all the time.
Hey, listen, there was a reason why I was calling Kendrick Moxon and his crew the other day a bunch of criminals, right? Because that's what they want to use on
Yeah.
us, and flip it around on them, and it shocks them for that quick second, and they
Mhm.
don't know how to respond, and then you can just keep on piling on, and they can't respond. That's a tactic that I like to use. It's true. Use their own stuff against them, but especially since they've been taught that if they do this, this is the type of reaction you can expect on the other side. When it doesn't quite work out that way, I don't think they know how to react. And then from there, again, just like I said, it's hard for you to attack when you have your fist in somebody's mouth. They're going to just kind of break down and listen. Eventually, they're going to retreat. They're going to retreat like we've seen in the test center, where they have been closed since January 20th. In fact, the last time that building was open was right after Aaron got arrested. They closed the doors a half an hour after he got arrested, and they have not been open since.
Wow. Auditing Scientology, he's out in Kansas City, says, I get called a bigot a lot,
Yeah.
from
That
Scientology and Scientologists.
Yeah, Ken Moxon used that in the trial. He referred to the protesters as bigots, as everything that we say is hate speech. Listen, it's kind of tired. I think the way they try to categorize stuff, it's tired. Nobody's listening to that anymore. I think the majority of people out here are familiar now with the Church of Scientology's abuses. And I think when you make accusations like that's hate speech and stuff, and somebody's listening and saying, hey, Scientology's a cult, they'll ruin lives. I don't think the average person sees that as hate speech. I think they see that as, well, everything that I've seen on TV says so. And heck, even South Park has been making fun of them. So
Yeah, they did a great job. Bridget says, William, you lift everyone's spirit and always help whenever you can. You're an inspiration, and I'm very proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Let's see. Casey Cat, thank you for the super chat. Osa, knock, 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 knock. Pro tip, be careful who you piss off on the sidewalk. They just might come for you like a category 4 hurricane and you'll never see it coming. Hashtag Gude father.
I mean, we all know how I started doing this. They felt they owned the sidewalk. They wanted me to leave the sidewalk area where I was doing filming at police stop. All I know is when I walk over there now, they are inside and I can walk freely up that sidewalk and they won't say a thing. So they've left the sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly. That's totally what happened. Ramble on. The world wants to know what happened to the robot videos. We need new ones.
I know I film them all the time. I just never get around to posting. I think if I don't post for a while, even though I film them, I start getting anxiety just thinking about posting. Like, oh, I haven't posted in a while, and yeah, my brain is like rotten that way where I just keep on putting it off. But I'll post some new ones soon.
Good. Well, I'm excited to see you out there again and see what's happening, especially with Winter Wonderland coming up. I mean, we're in October right now. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I don't see any way they can't do it. So I hope they do it because it's going to be awesome.
I think Kendrick Moxon should hope they do it, because the alternative is that we'll be protesting in front of his house, putting a little pressure on him, and specifically we're going to be protesting, asking, and this is Laura FM actually created this idea, protesting, asking asking for justice for Ken Moxon's daughter who was killed by the Church of Scientology. And maybe we'll put together a few manila envelopes for his neighbors to warn that your neighbor uses the legal system as a weapon against Church of Scientology's critics. It happened to us, it could happen to you.
Yeah.
Fair
Yep,
game.
that's very true. That's exactly what they do. Casey Cat, thank you for the 10 Scientology Life After a Cult memberships. Mahalo. I appreciate that. William, I thank you so much for coming on and for updating everybody. It's always fun to kind of get caught up, and I hope to do it again, especially if they do Winter Wonderland.
Oh man. Oh man. It was great coming on here. It's been a while. We should do it more often.
Absolutely. We will do it more often. Well, thank you again. Everybody, please, on your way out, hit that like button, hit subscribe. But most of all, I hope you all get out and have a fabulous cult-free day.